Genesis 50, Joseph, last chapter. Last chapter of a story that touches almost as no other does. My main theme is forgiveness, conflict resolution, which is the theme of all of the Bible verses this morning. It is also all about the gospel, the central message of the Bible. It's like the gospel according to Joseph. We'll see it in three parts: Joseph's cry, Joseph's words, and Joseph's dilemma. A crier as I am, I couldn't help noticing. Did you see it? Joseph cries. Why did he cry? Joseph appears to the world in his family home in Canaan. His mother has already died. He has 12 brothers. And his father, the famous Jacob, has a liking for him. Because Joseph was more spoiled by his father than his brothers, the whole family system was poisoned. Relationships in character formation were compromised. We don't know to what extent Joseph knew how to deal with that favoritism, to what extent he didn't enter adolescence with an air of superiority, feeding into the narcissism that his father nurtured. What is certain is that his brothers suffered from the privilege that Joseph receives from his father. Two events made that very clear: the tunic and also the dream. With that pressure cooker on the fire, the foretold tragedy happened. Long story short, the brothers sold Joseph into slavery in Egypt and told their father that he had died. Jacob fell into despair. In Egypt, although Joseph had a promising start working in the household of an important family, he was wrongly accused of a crime he did not commit and ended up in jail. And for a moment in the story, we are all perplexed. His father is in Canaan, severe depression. His brothers are dealing with the guilt of what they have done, and Joseph is in an Egyptian dungeon. And the years go by with God apparently absent. Then Joseph's story takes a turn. In prison, he interprets the dreams of two of the Pharaoh's officials. One of them later brings him before the ruler, and Joseph helps him interpreting an important dream. That impressed Pharaoh, who offers him the position of Prime Minister of Egypt. Joseph does an excellent job and makes the country the breadbasket of the world. And when hunger strikes every nation in that area, guess who shows up in Egypt, desperate to buy from them? That's right, Joseph's brothers. But they don't recognize him, because he was not the boy he was once. Before them stands a grown-up, well-dressed, powerful man. The one they thought was already dead as a result of brutal slave labor in Egypt is more alive than ever and has their fate in his hands. Joseph used this as an opportunity. He hid his identity for a while and wisely made the brothers relieve the past that tormented them with guilt and shame. And when the time was right, Joseph revealed who he was, forgave his brothers, reunited with his father and the whole family, came to live in Egypt. And in our text, many years of reconciliation and reunion have passed. The whole family is all adapted in Egypt. Jacob, the father, has just died. And Joseph's brothers are worried. Verse 15. When they saw that their father was already dead, they said, Joseph may hate us. He will certainly repay us for all the evil that we have done to him. In other words, Joseph must still be angry at us. And he has power in his hands. He may not done anything before to avoid hurting our father, but now Joseph may want to pay us back. And what do? They send a message to Joseph saying, your father Jacob left instructions to you before he died. I'm asking you to forgive your brothers. And that is the moment that Joseph cries. Why does he cry? He cries because his brothers haven't come. A messenger has come. He cries because the message has a trace of resentment. Your father. It doesn't say our father. He cries because either the message had been given by his father and it hurts that his father still thought that he was capable of doing anything bad, or he cries because it's all a lie. Because driven by fear, the brothers make up the story. Joseph cries because the brothers' attitude reveals that ice is forming in their hearts again. Because despite all proofs of love, all the gestures of peace, and all the time he had invested in restoring brotherhood, reconciliation had not yet been complete. Painful marks and mistrust remained. He is realizing that a wound of that size may never be mended perfectly. The ideal of a happy family before heaven will not be possible. Joseph cries. And we feel it because we've cried these tears too, haven't we? Who has ever tried to reconcile and come up against an impassable mountain? Who has ever tried to dry the ice of someone's heart? Who has experienced the drama of trying to tie the knots, regaining trust, intimacy with a loved one? Who has cried because realized that in a broken world that we live in, nothing that was broken will ever be the same again? Joseph cries. Broken bonds need time. No, don't need time. Need a miracle. Reconciliation with his brothers was not 100%, and more work will need to be done. Joseph weeps, but in the midst of his tears, he makes a decision. If something can be done to try to heal an inch more, to remove the fear and the distance from his brothers, and try to unite the family, he will do it. He will try. And then we see how he tries. Joseph's words, his response to the message. Joseph's words were, can we read it together? Oh, actually, it's not there. Don't worry about it. Joseph's words were, don't be afraid. Am I in God's place? You did indeed plan evil against me, but God has turned it into good, so that, as you see now, the families of many people will be saved. Don't be afraid. I will provide for you and for your children. There are three things here, two arguments and one promise. Verse 19, don't be afraid. Am I in God's place? It's a rhetorical question. Am I in God's place? The answer is no. Do you think I'm holding a grudge? No, because I am not in God's place. Let me ask you, who has the knowledge to know what a person deserves for what they've done? Do you? Do I? Who knows all the motives in a person's heart when they do what they do? Do you know everything behind? The pressures, the traumas, how they were treated by their parents? Who has enough knowledge to know what someone deserves? Not you, not me, only God. Second question, who has the right to charge someone for what they supposedly deserve to pay? Who has the authority and the power to ultimately hold someone accountable? Not you, not me. We're sinners. Only God can. Joseph is telling us that someone who holds a grudge, who wants to take credit for what the other person have done wrong, is putting himself in the position of God. They are assuming that they know what the other person deserves and they have the right to inflict the punishment. Joseph is telling us that this is not the way, that this is a dangerous road. Do you know why? Because putting yourself in God's place, how dare we? Don't we realize that we are incompetent for this job? That if we do that, we would be a total fraud. Have you ever gone to do a job and halfway through realized that you were unqualified? I've done so many times. Well, I'll tell you, an experience like that is nothing compared to us daring to put ourselves in God's place. We should tremble in the face of such situation. Never desired. Because putting ourselves in God's place is the quickest way to become like Satan. Yes, trying to be God is the surest way to end up in hell, to go against God. John Milton, Paradise Lost, 17th century, had made that clear to us. That is also the argument behind the movie The Devil Advocate. And also, that's the main plot of The Lord of the Rings. The ring, the powerful ring that can defeat evil, taking the ring, possessing the ring, changes people, makes them part of the evil. The best thing is to throw it into the fire, is not wanting the power. It's an incredible metaphor for Joseph and the question of forgiveness. I am not in God's position. I don't want to be. I don't want the ring. I'm not in a position to want to be in God's place, deciding everyone's punishment. Revenge belongs to Him, and it's a good thing. And the opposite is also true. When we flee from the temptation, when we, like Joseph, flee from putting ourselves in God's place, we flee from being the moral authority. This is the surest way to be recognized as a person of God, as someone pious. Do you want to make an impact in the world? Do you want to leave a beautiful, sacred mark, a testimony? Do you want to get to heaven? Then run away from God's chair. That's what Joseph is saying. Secondly, Joseph goes deeper. You indeed planned evil against me, but God has turned it into good. That is the whole problem of evil. Where is God when we suffer? Here we have an answer to what God does when evil happens. He fights it. Sometimes He simply stops it. But sometimes he uses, he changes, he resignifies it and turns evil into good. In the New Testament, we have an equivalent passage in Romans 8. All things work together for good of those who love God. Joseph goes deeper with this speech because he's saying, not only I don't have the knowledge to retaliate, the right to retaliate, I don't need to. I don't need to. Do you know why? Because I have learned from God. I have come to know a God who never abandoned us, who never sleeps, who is tireless in turning evil into good, because I know that nothing bad will ever happen. And if it happens, will never stay the same. Anything bad that happens will be eventually confronted by God. It will be judged and it will be used. It will become an ornament in the tapestry He's waving in my life. Joseph saw this, and that's why he could be at peace and guaranteed that he is not going to go back to the decision on forgive, as if he was saying to his brothers, you couldn't finish me off. And the pain and perhaps the resentment I felt couldn't finish me off. Couldn't leave me in the pit forever, in the pit of pain, in the pit of victimism. Because I have discovered a God who does not let us sink, who does not let evil, any suffer, finish us off, but is involved permanently, working to transform any bad in good, to lift up to things never imagined. Joseph anticipated Pastor Tim Keller's tweet. God has given me everything I would have asked for in prayer if I had known everything He does. Chew on that. Joseph's final line, verses 21. Don't be afraid. I will provide for you and for your children. And so Joseph comforted them and spoke to their hearts. After the argument, the promise, protection. He didn't put himself in God's place, humility. He trusted that God was at work, faith. Add one to the other and you have love. Forgiveness that is not just spoken, it will materialize. I'm going to take care of you. I hope that one day we can totally rebuild our relationship. Be brothers like we've never been before, without any preference, without any jealousy, without any poison in the air. But even if that doesn't happen, I will take care of you. No one will hurt you, not even me. Forgiveness does not always give us the opportunity, or forgiveness don't always have the need to materialize into care and protection and love, but sometimes it's the only thing we're left to. We can't always rebuild or recover friendships, ties, and affections, but forgiveness, which acts in favor of the other, can always be practiced. I am going to support you and your family. I will support you at the very least with my prayers. I will take care of you. At the very least, your reputation. I'm going to stop bad-mouthing you. Even if we don't get to be best friends again, at least know that you can count on me. Joseph's dilemma. We have a problem with Joseph. What's the problem? Is Joseph's quality standard we can't deny the example of life and faith that Joseph sets in front of us. There's so many books and sermons that explore and exalt Joseph as a model of life with God. There's everything from don't give up on your God-given dreams to the example of being faithful in tribulation to the recipe of escaping sexual temptation and of course the perfect formula for forgiveness. A friend of mine said that Joseph is like the Swiss Army knife of piety. You want morality? We got it. You want resilience? We got it. We want wisdom? We got it. Do you want mercy? Here's a hero in the Bible that apparently does not have feet of clay. Show me a hero and I will write you a tragedy, said F. Scott Fitzgerald. Well, not with Joseph. This guy is spectacular. And that's our dilemma. His standard distances him from us. He's not our typical guy. He inspires up to a point, and then he crushes us with guilt because we cannot measure up like him. Would you like to compare? For example, how do we deal with conflict? With people who hurt us. We say, don't worry about it, everything is fine, nothing happened. 10 years later, we're still on a therapist couch. Dealing with all of the wounds that we thought or we pretended that we didn't have. We should have dealt with them without denial. Joseph isn't like that. Joseph doesn't say, don't worry, be happy, I'm over it. No, it hurts and he says it hurts. But he doesn't go after revenge. He's not defensive, but he doesn't want to strike back. He wants to heal because he's healed. And he was healed because he didn't pretend everything is fine. He was healed by learning about God's medicine of grace and applying it daily to the wounds. Second example, Joseph's famous phrase is when we say, what you planted for evil, God turned it for good. Someone might say, I say that too. I think so too. Is that so? Mm-hmm. Let's put this to test. What is good? What good is Joseph talking about? Is he talking about his life? That he was sold into slavery, but he ended up well? When we use this phrase from Joseph, we only like the first part. You planted evil, but God turned it evil into good. You wanted to do evil to me, but God is faithful and has honored me. Emphasis. He honored me. We may not say it, but we think it. Individualists that we are. God did good to me. He blessed me. He made me a better person. Like Nietzsche. What doesn't kill me makes me stronger. We get intoxicated with this motto. It's not wrong in itself, but we could be ended up very self-centered, egocentric by thinking like this. Joseph wasn't talking about me. When Joseph said, you planned evil, but God turned evil into good, he could have, but he was thinking on himself, on his personal success. He was thinking on others. Just see how he ends the sentence. See, the amount of suffering that I was given was actually useful. It was positive for the salvation of many. I went through what I went through, and as a result, God saved many people from hunger. Everything bad that happened to me wasn't to make me better, but for the good of others. That's the problem with Joseph. An example like Joseph, my God, a model like Joseph, who can do it? Not only he is a guy who can forgive the unforgivable, but he can see purpose in tragedy. Not for his own benefit, but for the salvation of others. I don't know about you. I'm losing my oxygen here. I'm getting suffocated. Joseph is a problem for me. He makes me see my imperfection. He fills me with guilt. What do we do with Joseph? We have to see him beyond the extraordinary example as a signpost, as a sign pointing forward to someone else. Joseph can give the power to become like him, but he can point to someone who can. Who is he pointing to?
Jesus.
You know the answer. Centuries later, Jesus Christ came to this world and was also rejected by his blood brothers. Centuries ago came a guy who was betrayed, sold for the price of a slave by one of his own, like him. Jesus was also imprisoned despite being guilty of nothing, just like Joseph. Jesus also experiencing suffering, and through his suffering, he also saved many. Not from 7 years of hunger, but from eternal condemnation for their sins, from their existential hunger to be close to God again. And because Jesus suffered even more than Joseph, he also was elevated to the position of right hand of a man with a lot of authority, not a Pharaoh, but God, the King of the universe. And what does Jesus do from that exalted position? How does he look on everyone who daily and abundantly sin, disobeyed him? Yeah, Judah, Reuben, Simeon, yes. But what about us? Are we any different? What has Jesus done for us? He has said again and again and again, Father, forgive them. Father, forgive them. I forgive you. He has interceded in our behalf. He has taken care of us. He has sustained us and our families and our children, and he has spoken soft into our hearts. Joseph can speak of love and forgiveness to 12 brothers. Jesus does the same every day to everyone in the world. Jesus speaks of love to you, my brothers and sisters. Joseph was stripped from his tunic. Jesus was stripped from his tunic, his clothes. But Joseph doesn't have the strength to give us his clothes, to clothe anyone. Jesus, since our baptism, dresses up in the proper clothes for the wedding banquet, for the feast of the kingdom. Jesus is the great Joseph. He's the one who Joseph points to, not just as an example to us, who inspires but crushes. No, because everything that Jesus did, he did it not only as an example, but as our substitute. He did it on our behalf. And when he invites us to imitate him, it's an invitation that comes with power and strength of the Holy Spirit and with grace that forgives us when we fail. Do poisoned systems hurt you? Do incomplete reconciliation hurt me? That has an end date. God invites you to try to do something today, to take the initiative, to open your heart, to give someone a chance, to forgive or ask forgiveness. But if that relationship doesn't come back, one day it will. One day all of us who are in Christ will be complete, healed of any trace of sin, and perfect reconciliation with so-and-so is getting closer every day.
Amen.
How nice if we can enjoy it soon. But heaven will bring you face to face with that person that threw you into the pit, or with that person that you have abandoned. and you guys will hug each other. What's your problem today? Did someone take away your opportunity? Your money? Did someone unjustly accuse you? Made you suffer? Wait. Trust. Create expectation because God is involved. Everything is working. God is coming. Is it fear? Do Joseph's brothers define you today? Has a Jacob died? Has tragedy happened? And you are anxious, suffering in anticipation, trembling without justification? What will become of us? What will become of me? Listen to the one who is greater than Joseph, speaking to your heart, comforting you, telling you, don't be afraid. I'm going to take care of you. I will take care of your family.